Okay, so Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 feels like a home run for the MCU. After a lot of underwhelming projects recently, it did feel like the franchise had somewhat lost its appeal. Instead of the heart and creativity that had once made the studio special, we were reduced to what felt like products just coming off an assembly line. Whether it was in the cinemas or on the Disney Plus shows, it just seemed like Marvel were bombarding us with a lot of mediocrity, where the focus had been solely on making as much money as possible. We've had Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantum Media, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Midness, and many more. There's lots of talk about superhero fatigue at the moment, and with Marvel being the biggest producer of content in the genre, it felt like this once gigantic juggernaut had somewhat lost its way. It's the same thing that's unfortunately happened with Star Wars. Whereas these projects once felt like major events you couldn't miss out on, people are happy to skip them now because they don't really feel like they matter. The Midalorian, sake. Now, you know I love comic books, but it had got to the point where even I thought things were getting oversaturated, and there weren't any stories that felt like they innovated and raised the bar. I was actually talking with a Canadian lad about this last week, and we got into how many projects there were coming out, and how it's also really cringy when YouTubers name drop other YouTubers to make themselves sound important. However, I was saying that the current slate feels like back in the day when you go into a comic shop and pick up one of their pre-packaged bundle of books where there was about 10 put in a black bag and it was labelled something like Mystery Mix. The price was pretty cheap, so it seemed like a good deal, but upon opening it up at home, you'd see there were some good ones, but most of them were meh. In the end, you'd read about 3 of them, and the other 7 were ones that you weren't really interested in, so you just never opened them up. I kind of feel like that's what the current state of affairs is, where we've been given a big bundle of books, but there's a lot we can't actually be bothered to read, and we're just sitting around skimming through the ones that might end up being interesting. Everyone's getting a comic book movie or show these days, but the C and D list characters are no longer the innovative ones that they used to be. Batman and Superman always had a big audience, so they could afford to do things by the numbers, and it was normally the more obscure characters that had to do things differently in order to stand out. However, I feel like the Batman and the Joker are being far more creative nowadays, whereas the ones like Shazam and Ant-Man are the franchises phoning it in. However, I'm happy to say that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 shows that when you have someone putting their heart and soul into something, that it can take things to the next level. Within the movie, there's one scene that I think not only exemplifies why I fell in love with the genre, but it also thematically brings together all the elements that made the franchise so successful. That is, of course, the corridor scene towards the end. Feels like James Gunn's going Super Saiyan, and this brings together everything he's learned since that first Guardians movie to make this moment his masterpiece. Now, to give some context to why it works so well, we have to look at what the Guardians have gone through. After an attack by Adam Warlock earlier in the movie, their faithful squirrel hedgehog hamster Rocket was left at death's door. Discovering a kill switch within him that would activate if they attempted to use a med pack, they set out to go and meet his maker. This took them to the High Evolutionary, who wiped out an entire planet of his experiment because he didn't think they lived up to his standard. The group had split up beforehand in order to go meet him, and the planet's destruction pushed them further apart. However, just before this scene, they managed to finally reunite in the hangar of the High Evolutionary ship. Quill said they had to go rescue Mantis, Drax and Nebula, but they made a big entrance by busting through the walls on the back of some obelisks. Now at this point, the group could easily go off and fly back to nowhere, leaving the Evolutionary to his own ends. After all, his experiments had been disrupted, and he'd even had his subjects turn against him and try and form a coup. However, there's just one little thing. The ship is full of animals and children that the High Evolutionary could subject to more experiments. Getting flashbacks of what it was like under the knife, Rocket valiantly says that he's not running anymore, and the pair man up to save the others. This really exemplifies what makes the Guardians, and this group is very much a voice for the misfits and outcasts who are often overlooked. Superhero movies at one point fell into the cliche of centering around saving the girl, with Lois Lane and so on always being the damsels in distress that got in danger. It's rare to see the freaks given a voice, but the Guardians are very much seen as their champions. Before the first film was released, no one thought the movie would be successful because this was a team made up of a raccoon and a talking tree. However, Gunn has always been a voice for obscure and overlooked characters, which the Guardians and the Evolutionaries' victims exemplify. You could argue all day about animal testing, fur, farming, the dairy industry, and the cruelty within them is often something we put at the back of our minds when we're eating and enjoying ourselves. Going off on a big tangent there, but I think Gunn purposely put animals and kids in cages to maybe try and act as metaphors for things in our world as a way to kind of be a voice for the voiceless. It's there if you want to see it and not if you don't, but it adds a nice layer of subtext to what the Guardians are trying to accomplish here. Now whether you think that's laced throughout the movie or not, I think there's no denying just how good this scene plays out. Set to the Beastie Boys' No Sleep Till Brooklyn, this signature song carries its own meaning that ties in with the group itself. The track is about touring, and in it the rappers talk about how tiring it can be going on these gigantic journeys from city to city. They're away from home, facing the monotony of just playing the same songs over and over again, and they're just without a sense of place. However, laced throughout the music is a sense of determination, and they say they won't rest until they reach their home in Brooklyn. Now metaphorically, that's what the Guardians are going through as well. They've been broken up, broken apart, and have been through battle after battle, but they won't stop until they save the day and then get home. It works perfect in this moment, and it also showcases Gunn's signature style in full effect. This is a director who's built his name off making moments almost like music videos, and he's an expert when it comes to selecting a song to put into a scene. Every Guardians film has had its own soundtrack, and we've gone from cassettes all the way up to a Zood, which Peter plays at the start of the scene to kick things off. Now, as for the moment itself, you just have to marvel at the technical work behind it. One-shot takes are ridiculously hard to put together, but Gunn has this hallway scene flowing beautifully from one character to the next. It shows all their strengths and weaknesses, and it really exemplifies how good the group are. We have Groot stuffing a branch down a hellspawn and then exploding it from the inside, Quill throwing electrical charges on guards, and Drax pinning someone to the wall with his knife. We even get callbacks to the prior films, with Rocket standing on Groot's shoulders shooting, and Quill's charge being something that he's used in other movies. My favourite moment though, by far, is watching Nebula get punched in the head to see it go over the back of her body. Lots of her bones and parts are broken during this moment, and I love how she pulls everything back together in place and keeps firing. The movie is of course laced with a lot of body horror, but this is the moment that stands out to me. Now we end the scene with Gamora fighting off against one of the evolutionary squid-headed Hellspawn. She's a character who hasn't really felt like she's part of the group, and this is due to all the stuff that happened with the multiverse earlier in the franchise. Quill has tried his hardest to get her back with them, and I think that it's during this moment that she finally feels like she's part of the team again. Ending on her and having the team all standing about panning is such an outstanding way to close it out, and the final shot of the group all together works so well to show that they're once more united. Now why I love this scene is because of the choreography on display, the way the camera does things like move through the stomach of a creature, the way that we see the Guardians all working together, and the way that the music reminds us of what's really going on in this moment. This is the team coming together for one final time to show us why we fell in love with them in the first place. It's got some great callbacks, is beautifully executed, and it shows the entire team both in front and behind the camera at their best. I don't know if this is the best action scene in the MCU, but I'm hard pressed to think of another one that tops it. In the end, I can't wait to rewatch this moment again, and that to me is why it's perfect. Now, if you agree or not, I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, so make sure you drop them down in the comments section below. If you want to support the channel, we've just launched a new James Gunn inspired t-shirt over at our Shop Zero edition. It says "Can't See Us" because they both go in invisible, and anyway, the shirts are super high quality. And we've worked with manufacturers directly to make it so they sit and contour to your body to bring out the best in you. It's a joint venture between me, Ryan at Screen Crush, and Greg at Real Rejects, and it helps to keep us all bringing you videos just like this. Link to it is in the description, and thank you so much if you decide to pick it up, our Theory Time merch, or something else for you or a loved one. Now if you want something else to watch, then check out our breakdown of who Adam Warlock is, and also our video on why Phyla-Vell could end up becoming extremely important. Please hit the thumbs up button if you enjoy the breakdown, and make sure you subscribe for videos like this every day. Either way, I've been Paul, you've been the best, and thanks for stopping by the Heavy Spoilers show. You take care of yourself, I'll see you next time.